So, I have, it's interesting going on after them because I feel like my whole life has been dedicated to basically creating things out of nothing. And I found a lot of benefit to that. And so this art monk thing that I'm speaking about is this life that I've had where I basically created things that I wasn't able to or supposed to or was told I couldn't, and I would find large groups to basically crowd it, a lot like this. But I did it without this amazing structure and support and group of people. So I might be redundant, I might be saying the things that is really obvious here, but for me it was really hard earned. And it became a dedication of what I almost felt was like an art monk. And I felt like I had this privity of, I'd have nothing and I'd be told I couldn't have anything. And then I would find people that were kind of on the same path and I'd build this thing that would sink me even deeper into the creative process. And because it wasn't monetized, and this is kind of the big point, I had a different creative experience. So I've done both. I've worked, and I'm using film and entertainment. I grew up out here. This is, I actually grew up down near MacArthur Park. And so I grew up knowing a lot of people within the entertainment industry, and I was able to sort of experience that both as a performer internationally, but also I began to create content. I began to create my own things because I wasn't getting enough out of the entertainment industry. I wanted to do more. As I submerged further into that, I found out that without monetizing, I would then create another level or another experience within the actual creative experience as well as what I created. I don't know if that makes a lot of sense, but it'll make sense as we go on. So it became kind of a spiritual experience. And that seems really obvious, again, to a lot of people. For me, it was not. I discovered it as an experience. And I think within this was the idea of doing things for free. And that's kind of my other part of this is the notion that when we do things for free and we choose to do things for free, we achieve and experience something different. And it's important because it alters what we choose to do. And the way that I explain this is I know many professional people in the industry who are miserable, and they're very successful. And so their whole lives they strive to get into entertainment, they try to get famous, and then they achieve that and they were unhappy. Again, a repetitive story, we know this story, and yet it's shocking how prevalent it is. So I would come along and say, hey, I have an idea, I'm doing something that's totally not what you're doing, and we get to kind of do what we want, and we have to do what we want, and they would jump on board. So that is kind of my art monk aspect of this. And then the science aspect is, so discovering in this industry and monetized industries, there's a lot of compartmentalization. So your actors don't direct, your directors don't edit, and in fact, even our unions say, a director, if he touches that light, he's penalized. And so you actually do not learn the other aspects of the industry. So that's our first one. Oh, there we go. Okay, so these are examples of the projects that I did. These are feature films, and I did them for virtually nothing. Bad Dog and Superhero was my first one. I had probably about 75 to 80 people over 5 years to make it. So it took longer, and it involved a lot of people. In the end, my actor went on to win a Tony Award, which I can't take credit for, but I will. And I went on to win Film Festival Awards. The next one is The Bloody Indulgent, which is a theater director in Los Angeles. He's very famous for his small theater, and this is why I was drawn to him. He couldn't get above massive success in small theater in Los Angeles. That's a huge accomplishment, but it's valueless for the most part. So I wanted to help him make a film. And he came to me and said, I want to make a vampire musical. I said, there's no way in hell I'll ever make a vampire musical. That sounds stupid. He said, please read this short story, and I read it, and it was stunning. And I said, okay, if you can make that about double the length, I'm really interested. What will I bring to it? He said, what will you bring to it, pointing to me? And I said, I'll get it done. And that's all that I could promise, and that's my best promise. In the end, I got Kevin Richardson, who's Backstreet Boy, and he was stunning to work with. I got Diva Zappa, who's Frank Zappa's daughter, and I got another gentleman, Brian Gaskill, who was a daytime TV soap star. So with this group, out of nothing and with no money, in about 3 years, I finished that one. And that was another free beast. The last one is Einstein's God Model. I was told that I could never make a science fiction film with heavy visual effects. And of course, that drew me like a moth, and I made the most science fiction-y film possible with zillions of effects, and I was told that that was not possible. And we ended up doing it. It took me 9 years, but it's out. We're hitting the festivals now. We're doing pretty decently. And that is proof of this concept. So how it worked was I would choose somebody, for example, and I don't want to get too technical, but basically visual effects. I had a friend who worked at DreamWorks. He had no time. There was no way he could, do this film, which it needed somebody of that caliber. And then I would find about 5 other people that would work under him. Now, this isn't done in the industry, so it's revolutionary. However, it's really not revolutionary at all. It's pretty basic. But it takes me a huge amount of convincing to get people to do it. Once they do it, they all get it, and they like it. The 5 people that worked under him are very excited to work for him, very excited for the credit. They work about 5 times as hard as a person should to do it, but they're learning while doing it and getting a credit. He oversees it. It's really simple. At the end of the night, he looks at about 30 seconds of VFX and goes, no, yes, no, redo, do. And slowly but surely, we got a visual effects movie. So I don't want to belabor the point, but that's what I did with all the departments. And I slowly came deeper and deeper into this free notion and crowdsourcing and ways to do it within this industry. So onward we go. I talked a little bit about this, about compartmentalization. I think I'd cross over now into the science aspect. So coming from the performing arts, that's where I started. I worked as a dancer and then an actor and then went into cinema or filmmaking. The science aspect is obviously everything around is science, right? All these cameras, this is all science. And we have our science people sort of over here, and we have our performing people, and they're the loud ones that like to be seen, and the science ones are the ones that are doing. And this process, to me, this compartmentalization, reduced the product capacity, reduced everyone's ability to contribute. So what I would do is I would try to bring people together that weren't supposed to be brought together. And I would bring the actors in when I'm doing different aspects that are supposedly technical, and I would allow them to both kind of merge and immerse with each other. This process I found stunning. And I found it in many areas, but I'm using this as an example of where I see that art and science fundamentally are integrated and need to be integrated and need to be embraced that way, which is an aspect of this talk. All right, moving on. Tell me if I'm boring you. Am I boring you? It's okay? All right. Okay, so this is just some... I had an amazing introduction, but this is just to give you a little bit. No one knows me, so you need to know a little bit about my perspective. Whether you think it's amazing or it's underaccomplished, it doesn't matter. It just matters that you understand where I came from and what it is that I bring or understand of this process that we're speaking about. So I started as a dancer and an actor, and this brought me into my deep creativity, and it really did. I isolated almost in a way and found a place inside of myself that was truly another dimension, and it informed me tremendously, and I realized it was something I had to develop and something I had to explore, and this was really important. The next thing is I got the cinema degree. This was to break out of the entertainment that I was stuck in. Now, I always worked on both sides of the fence. I worked with the modern companies, dancing internationally or not in small places around here, as well as big places. I've worked, commercially. I've sold you Sprite, probably, or tried. I've sold you Audi cars and things like that. But I wanted to do also other things because they last forever. I'd put on a show somewhere that was amazing or not, and you'd never see it again. I'd do it on film with the same amount of time, and you can see it forever. So that was something really important to me. I got an equine science degree, and this is funny, because it taught me interspecies communication, which sounds ridiculous, but I swear to you, this was probably one of the most important things I've ever experienced. I realized that people are interspecies. We're all interspecies on some level, be it our sexuality, be it just that we're different people. And discovering this helped me communicate better. I wouldn't say perfectly, but understood certain limitations as well as ways to advance this experience of collaboration. Pilot's license, whatever, I learned more about science and I loved that. The law degree was important to me because all the things that I do require intellectual property, require understanding how everything is governed by these words, these laws. Oh, thank you. So this was important. Real estate, we can breeze through this. The nonprofits, I did a low and moderate income housing nonprofit, which again taught me business and got me away from a creative, but actually was creative in a different way. Cannabis business is crazy and ridiculous, but changing. And then there's these famous people that I've worked with that are fascinating and interesting in and all of themselves. So we move on, and you get a sense of maybe me or what I have done in order to get to my concepts of me now. So what's important on a project, I've always found the idea, and this sounds obvious, but again, the idea usually is informed by people's programming, limitations, by what others tell them, by their academic experience. So going to this creative place that I'm speaking about, how do you find this inner depth of creativity, requires, in my opinion, you have to work on free things and you have to choose things every year, 2 or 3 a year, that you can't say no to. And this aspect is really important to me because then you develop this muscle that is not programmed by all the things, money, this, that, your friends, but or maybe is partially informed by all of those things, but eventually you get your own voice and your own desire, and that is the idea to me, the idea point. So that becomes very important. Onward. Okay, so this continues on a free mind to know your impulses, and I kind of just covered that. I think the way that I approached it is doing the free projects every year was the important part. Executing and finishing was as important because when you finished a project, you were informed by it. You were also informed how clear you were in your invention of it, in your integrity of the idea and your inspiration. So finishing was an important aspect. And again, I'm using cinema, but you can use anything. It's universal. And finishing. I can't say enough about finishing. No matter what you have at hand, to finish it was really important. And I also believe that doing these things 3 times in a row, whatever it is, if you write a book, if you write a comic book, if you create, code, if you create films, whatever it is, finish 3 things in a row. A dance, put 3 dances on the corner, no matter what. And that informs you, and that part is important. So I say at the end here, reflect on what you do. Onward we go. I always love this phrase. It's an old military phrase. Apparently, in the old military manuals that they'd hand you in 1910 when you'd go into the military, and it was this: any action, no matter how poorly conceived, if boldly executed, is better than no action at all. And I always thought that is the process for me, the creative process and the finishing process. So there is that. I have this answer for some people. I lecture internationally on filmmaking, and I always have this thing that there's a certain group of people that don't do it on their own. And I always say, go on with someone else. You might be a right-hand person, and you learn and do just as much, and you end up usually doing even better than what they did further down the road. So jump onto other things. Onward, this balance of art and business is really important in my industry because as you proceed in your arts, usually your business is, if I do 3 free things, then the things I get hired for are over here and they're separate. But what is fascinating is eventually they begin to grow together. They certainly love each other. If I do a free thing and we don't eat ever and we never get coffee on set and all of these things, and then I do a paid one, I really like it because there's coffee and things. And so they feed each other, and that's been really important. So there's that. The free projects do intersect. And basically, to summarize how I bring I didn't get so much in the science and the art of it, but they do come together, and in this industry particularly, but I think in all industries now, and exploring that and putting language to that has been really important and really educational to me. I suggest 3 free projects to everyone, no matter who or where you are. I think it makes you a happier, better person. Certainly does for me. Finishing and savoring is the also important aspect, because that reinforms you. And this last thing was just to remind me of my nonprofit that I started, which is Unified Everything Project, which basically I do free projects. I bring mentors, all the things I just explained to you. Bring mentors to work with newbies, give them credits and experience. I integrate art and science. I sit down with a roboticist and a dancer, and we make stories, and then we go out and we put them for free into the world. And that experience has been amazing. And that is the end of my talk. Thank you.
So sometimes when I consume something that's for free, my reaction is different from when I consume something that's paid.
Right.
So
that's
is there some sort of interaction between creating and consuming?
Yeah, well, I think that's an amazing question. And I have the same experience. And I also have the same experience when I know somebody. So when I know somebody who's doing something, so I tend to like to go to shows of people I know somehow, some connection, as opposed to the giant, stadium shows. However, I like those too, but differently. And I think it's important. I think it's something that we as a culture have been homogenized horribly. And however, I think we've seen great things, but I think we also, I think Bill is a perfect example. It's fearless of, this is home cooking right here. Is it great? No. Is it bad? No. There's something to it, and there's something different for everyone. So I agree with you, and there's certain things, like I say, I grew up out here. I go to the various shows. There's 1,500 theaters, and the more theaters per capita than anywhere in the country, and there's a lot of crap, and it's torturous. But are they trying to get involved in the business, or are they trying to get involved with their personal creation? And I think that, for me, has always been a distinguishing character. And their third one is different than their first one. So hopefully they do more than one or two. That's been my experiences. The first one might be a little rough. Second one gets somewhere. Third one, they're getting their stride. That's been my experience.